The consequences of leaving the church. Main scripture. Genesis chapter 35 verses 1 to 5. Then God said to Jacob, "Go up to Bethel and settle there, and build an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau." So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, "Get rid of the foreign gods you have with you, and purify yourselves and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and who has been with me wherever I have gone." So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods they had and the rings in their ears, and Jacob buried them under the oak at Shechem. Then they set out, and the terror of God fell upon the towns all around them, so that no one pursued them. Number 1. Jacob. The Bible states that those who acknowledge Jesus as their Lord should worship God within the church, not in the world. This is because the church serves as a sanctuary, protecting worshippers from worldly influences. Genesis chapter 34 recounts the story of Dinah, the daughter of Jacob and Leah, who is raped by Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the region. Jacob's sons deceive Shechem and Hamor by agreeing to the marriage on the condition that all the men of their city be circumcised. While the men of Shechem are in pain and weakened from the circumcision, two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, take revenge by killing all the male inhabitants of the city, including Shechem and Hamor. They also plunder the city and rescue Dinah. When Jacob learns of Simeon and Levi's actions, Jacob rebukes Simeon and Levi for their treachery and the potential danger it brings upon their family, as other Canaanite tribes might seek revenge. However, they justify their actions by arguing that they could not allow their sister to be treated like a prostitute. What caused this suffering? Why was Jacob subjected to such hardship? It was due to his failure to uphold a promise he had made to God. Long ago, he had vowed to build an altar in Bethel and offer sacrifices to him. Instead, he built the altar in Shechem. What was the issue with Jacob's action? Although he built an altar at Shechem instead of Bethel, as he had promised, does the location of the altar matter? Isn't it enough that he built one at all? Does it have to be in a specific place? Jacob's decision to build an altar at Shechem instead of Bethel symbolizes the idea of worshiping anywhere in the world, rather than exclusively within the church. This action highlights the mistake in Jacob's action. Jacob was supposed to go to Bethel, not Shechem. Bethel was the place where he had promised to build an altar, the designated site where he was committed to worshiping God. Therefore, Jacob decided to move to Bethel. On his way to Bethel, he was protected by God from the attacks of other Canaanites. Genesis chapter 35, verse 3. This story remains relevant today. Where are we choosing to worship God? Thanks to advanced technology, online worship services are now active globally, offering a convenient way for people to worship from the comfort of their own homes. This trend has been especially accelerated by the COVID-19 lockdowns over the past years. Number 2. The Israelites. The place where God dwells is the temple. It is the temple where God hears our prayers. In 1 Kings chapter 8 verses 27 to 40, Solomon marveled that even the heavens could not contain God, much less the temple he had built. He earnestly asked God to hear his prayers and the prayers offered at the temple. He pleaded for God's justice when individuals came seeking divine judgment at the temple. Solomon interceded for Israel, asking God to forgive them when they repented and prayed toward the temple after experiencing defeat or hardship. He also included foreigners in his prayer, asking that God would hear them as well, so that all nations might come to know and fear his name. The only place for worship is, therefore, the church. The Israelites were also commanded to worship God in the temple. In the book of Ezra, God moved the heart of Cyrus, prompting him to permit the Israelites to rebuild the temple of the Lord. Ezra chapter 1 verses 1 to 2. The temple is the place where we can seek and receive God's help. Moving away from it leads to suffering. Naomi serves as an example. Number 3. Naomi. When a severe famine struck the land, Naomi and his family left Bethlehem and moved to Moab. It is important to note that Naomi lived during the time when judges ruled the land. This was a time when the Israelites engaged in proper worship and adhered to the teachings of God under the guidance of these judges. Furthermore, Bethlehem translates to house of bread in Hebrew, symbolizing the temple of God where His word, or spiritual bread, is proclaimed. Therefore, Naomi's decision to leave Bethlehem symbolizes her distancing from the church. What were the consequences of her decision? Her husband and 2 sons died. Ruth chapter 1 verses 3 to 5. Thus, Naomi decided to return to Bethlehem, where at that time the Israelites were provided for by God. Ruth chapter 1 verse 6. Furthermore, it was the time of the barley harvest. Ruth chapter 1 verse 22. It was a tradition among the Israelites to leave a tenth of their harvest in the fields, allowing their poor neighbors to gather it and sustain themselves. This signifies that when we decide to return to the church, God will address our problems and provide for our needs. Ruth chapter 1 verse 21. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. Number 4. The Prodigal Son. So, the story of Ruth resembles the parable of the prodigal son. Luke chapter 15. A young man demands his inheritance early from his father and squanders it in reckless living. Finding himself in poverty, he returns home, expecting to be treated as a servant, just as Naomi left rich and returned poor. To his surprise, his father welcomes him back with open arms, celebrating his return with a feast. The message from the parable of the prodigal son resonates with the rest of the stories discussed earlier: Jacob, the Israelites, and Ruth. Conclusion: Christians are called to lead a church-centered life. Leaving the church leads to suffering, yet God promises restoration upon our return to the church.